Hello and welcome. I'm a DEQ Materials Management Regional Specialist, and this video will provide a step-by-step instructions on how to complete the Opportunity to Recycle reporting form for cities over the population of 4,000. For your information, we have changed the form slightly this year by adding space for you to provide detailed information regarding your education and outreach programs. The purpose of this form is for DEQ to determine a city's compliance with the Opportunity to Recycle requirements. We recommend that you complete this form in collaboration with the county, city, and the service provider, since each of these entities can play a role in implementing the recycling programs in the city. So let's begin. The first table is for you to show us what materials are collected, where, and how they are collected in your community. Materials that are collected residential, commercial, multifamily, or at a depot. So you can complete this section by indicating what materials are collected and how, such as commingled or on the side. So moving on to the general requirements. All cities over the population of 4,000 are required to do these activities listed here. To start this section, please indicate the name of the service provider or providers in your community. Now let's walk through each requirement. This first set of boxes is just for you to verify that the education and promotion programs in your city are meeting the general requirements. The answer to this box should be yes, since you are required as a city over the population of 4,000 to implement all of these programs. Next, you are required to provide an initial notice to residential and commercial generators that are new. So if a new person moves into the area or you have a new customer, you are required to provide some sort of initial notice so they know how to recycle and what the programs are in that area. Next, you're also required to provide a semi-annual notice of the opportunity to recycle. This would include materials, the information should include materials collected, collection schedule, how to prepare the materials, and why recycling is important. Since you need to do this twice a year, we have provided 2 spaces here for you to tell us how you're getting those messages out. For date and time of year, you could just include the first quarter or the last quarter of the year. It doesn't have to be a specific date. For media and type of delivery method, this could be things such as a city or service provider's newsletter, or information on the web page, or a brochure that you might send to every customer every year. Next, the topic of the message would be where and how to recycle. And who is completing this activity? Is it the service provider? Is it the city? Or is it the county? So here's where you would indicate the 2 reaches that you did out to residents during the year. Next, you are also required to provide educational promotional materials to local media, such as newspapers, televisions, radio stations, community groups. These rules are relatively old, and therefore social media actually wasn't present when these rules were written, but we do include social media in this. So if you are promoting your programs through social media, you can indicate that here. Next, this is the area where you would provide an official contact person's name who is in charge of recycling education and promotion in your jurisdiction. You'd put their name here. This could be someone who works for your service provider, or it could be a city official and might be your waste shed representative. Next, you also need to have a procedure for citizen involvement in the city's education and promotion program. This could be something as formal as a solid waste advisory committee, or it could be less formal, just like a contact person that a citizen could reach out to if they have a concern or questions about the educational material in your area. The next 2 boxes are about recycling depots. If you have a recycling depot in your area and it has an attendant, so it's a manned depot, there's someone there present at the depot, you're required to distribute written information about what could be recycled there. If you don't have a manned depot, you could just indicate at the end of this sentence here, NA, because it's not applicable to you. The next one is if you do have a depot and it is not attended, you are required to have signs posted at the depot so people know what they can recycle at the depot there. Moving on to the recycling program elements. There are 13 recycling program elements a local government can choose to implement. The number of programs a local government implements is based on the city's population and distance to market. Here on the form is where we would put how many programs your city is required to implement, so you will know the correct number that you are required to implement in a year. Just so you know, if you check the big boxes here for each one of these programs, you are required to check the smaller boxes. For example, here under C, there's a big box and then there's smaller boxes underneath. You are required to check all of the boxes to be in compliance. So let's go back to Program A. This would be, if your local government chooses Program A, you are required to deliver to each residential collection service customer at least one durable recycling container with a volume of at least 12 gallons. Next, for Program Element B, this is to provide on-route collection at least once a week of source-separated recyclable material. So this would be for a weekly collection program. If you do every other week, you cannot check this box. Next, let's move on to Program Element C. This is an expanded education and promotion program. Now, C is the expanded education program. This goes beyond the education you are required to provide in the general requirements. However, some of these activities do overlap or piggyback on each other. For instance, the first one here, you are required to provide a new customer packet. You are also required to do this for the general requirements. So if you are doing it above in the general requirements, you don't have to do it twice. You're covered here. Although this program has some similarities to the general requirements, the general requirements focus on recycling only. The expanded education program also requires that you provide information about waste prevention, reuse, and composting as well, as indicated here. In addition, the expanded education program requires that you provide education to service customers 4 times a year, not just twice like the general requirements. We have provided 4 boxes here for you to tell us how you are reaching out to your residents, providing this information. Some examples of how you can provide this information could be city or service providers newsletters, or bill inserts. That would be a city bill insert, or it could be a service provider's bill insert, posting information on a county, city, or service provider's website, or other social medias. So as I indicated before, for time, it doesn't have to be a specific date. It could be just time of year. Next, the media type would be telling us, is it a newsletter, a brochure? Is it on the web page? Topic of message. Are you including the waste prevention, reuse, and composting, or was this touch just for recycling? And lastly, who completed this activity? Was it the service provider? Was it the city? Was it the county? Or was it someone else? So moving on, you are also required to target at least one community or media event. This could be any type of event as long as the educational materials or messages are provided at the event. Some examples of an event could be a city festival, a city cleanup day, a household hazardous waste collection event, or even a repair fair. Here's where you would indicate what type of event it was, what was the topic of the message, and who completed this activity. And lastly, for expanded education and promotion program, you will need to use different types of medias to get this educational information out to residents because people receive information differently. So it is important to get the information out using different methods. Moving on to program element D. This is a multifamily recycling program. You're required, if you choose this program, to establish and implement a recycling collection program through local ordinance, contract, or other means enforceable by the appropriate city or county for each multifamily dwelling complex having 5 or more units. This program shall collect at least 4 recyclable materials and must do all of the following below. You are required to actively declare through an ordinance, resolution, franchise agreement, or other administrative process that you have chosen to implement multifamily recycling. We would like you to provide a copy of that ordinance with your report. Next, you need to take steps to ensure that both landlords and tenants have been informed that landlords must provide recycling services. And lastly, you also need to provide educational information so the tenants that live there know how to recycle and what to recycle. Next, moving on to program element E. This is to provide a residential yard debris collection program. If you choose this, you will need to establish and implement an effective residential yard debris program for the collection and composting of residential yard debris. It has to have at least monthly en-route collection of yard debris, or it can have a system of residential yard debris collection depots. If you do have the depots, there has to be one conveniently located for every 25,000 people. You are also required to do some promotion for this program. First, you would want to promote how residents need to prepare their yard debris to go into the containers. You also need to promote home composting. So here's an opportunity where you could piggyback on other educational outreach that you're already doing. If you do a newsletter that talks about above in the general requirements or in the expanded education and promotion program, if you're talking about recycling in a newsletter, you could also talk about home composting here and your residential yard debris program. You could piggyback on educational outreach you're already doing. Moving on to F. F is a commercial recycling program. So this requires that you establish and implement regular on-site collection of source-separated recycled materials from commercial entities. And it shall provide to commercial entities that employ 10 or more persons and occupy 1,000 square feet in a single location. You should provide other elements such as waste assessments to businesses, providing recycling receptacles to businesses, and also a waste prevention and recycling recognition program. There is an educational component here as well. You will need to provide information to commercial generators so they know how to recycle in this program. Moving on to G. G is an expanded recycling depot. Now, this requires that you establish a depot for recycling collection of recyclable materials. This would be one recycling depot in addition to any depot that is required by the general requirements. Now, the general requirements state that if you have a permitted facility, such as a transfer station or a landfill, you're required to have a recycling depot there or provide a more convenient location. So this depot would be in addition to that depot that is required by the permit. If you do this, you have to have at least one conveniently located depot for every 25,000 people. And it needs to have convenient hours and open on a weekday, so one weekend day in a week. Next, there needs to be some promotional information that goes out to residents so they know where the depots are and what they can recycle at the depot. Next, moving on to H. This is a collection rate established as a waste reduction incentive. This requires that you establish collection rates for residential solid waste from single-family residents that encourages source reduction of waste, reuse, and recycling. So the rates at a minimum shall include the following: at least one rate for containers that is 21 gallons or less in size and cost less than the larger container. Rates shall be based on an average weight of solid waste disposed per container for various sizes of containers. So this would require that you do some sort of study or establish the rates for the average weights of solid waste. Next, the rates as calculated on a per pound disposed basis shall not decrease per pound with the increasing size of the container or the number of containers. Lastly, rates per container service shall be established such that each additional container beyond the first container for each residential unit shall have a fee charge that is at least the same fee and no less than the first container. So this program, it would not qualify if you just have different sizes of containers that have different prices. It does require that you do this weight-based study showing the average weight of solid waste disposed per container. Moving on to I, which is commercial composting. If you choose this, you must establish and promote an ongoing system to collect food waste and other compostables from commercial and institutional entities that generate large amounts of waste. This would require that a local government would, before diverting edible food to be composted, a local government should consider how to encourage making that food available to charity for human consumption or for farmers. And next, there is an educational component that targets commercial generators such as grocery stores, restaurants, hotels, businesses, and other institutions that have food service. There is an educational component to this as well. You need to get information out to these generators so they know how to compost their food waste. Moving on to J. J is a required commercial generators to source, separate recyclable materials. So if you choose this, you need to establish a commercial recycling program that requires the commercial generators that generate large amounts of recyclable materials to source, separate recyclables. Large generator means a generator of solid waste that has a service level of 4 or more cubic yards of solid waste per week at a single site. So if a local government chooses this, they need to do the following with the large quantity generators. They need to ensure that they are source separating recyclable materials. Self-haulers are arranged for collection service of source separated recyclable materials. They need to provide recycling containers for internal use, and they need to make sure that those containers are correctly labeled. The local government must establish a method for identification of monitoring these large generators. The local government must notify the large generators if they are out of compliance, and they need to provide education to these large generators. Now, J is different from F. F is providing commercial recycling. J is requiring commercial generators that generate large quantities. They are required to recycle. So this is quite a bit different than F. Once again, we've provided 2 spaces here, so you can tell us how you are promoting that program. Moving on to K. This is a residential food waste collection program. If you choose this, you must provide at least monthly or more frequent en route collection of composting for food waste from residential generators. Your promotion needs to make sure that you're telling residents the types of food waste that can be collected, the schedule for collection, the method of preparing food waste, explaining why separating food waste for recovery is necessary, and also explaining how to reduce contamination. You're required to provide education about this program at least twice a year. Once again, this could be another opportunity for you to piggyback on other programs that you're doing. Around the state, lots of programs include food waste in their residential yard debris. So if that's the case here and you're already promoting your residential yard debris program, you could add food waste education to that and piggyback on the methods you're already using to get that information out. Let's move on to L. This is Recovery Program for Construction and Demolition Debris. It requires that construction and demolition debris must be source separated at the site or sent to a material recovery facility for processing and recovery. It requires that generators that self-haul at a minimum of 6 cubic yards of construction and demolition debris at any time, or arranges for collection of service of minimum of 10 cubic yards of construction and demolition debris at that time. You are required to implement a promotion program for developers, contractors, and residential owners to reduce waste during pre-construction planning phase and building construction, renovation, and the demolition phase, and to direct waste to reuse and material facilities. You must do this at least once a year. We've provided a space for you to tell us how you're doing that. And lastly, program element M. This requires large non-residential food waste generators to source separate. So you'd be required to provide a food waste collection program requiring non-residential generators that generate large amounts of food waste to source separate the food waste. Large generator means non-residential generators that dispose of more than 50 tons of food waste annually. This would require participation in food waste collection programs of all large generators and require the following. Include at a minimum food waste that is not packaged and for which the final disposal of the large generator is controlled by the non-residential generator employees or agent. Source separate food waste for donation or food waste collection. Self-haul or arrange for collection of service of food waste. Provide containers for internal areas where food waste may be collected and correctly label those containers. In addition, you need to establish a method for identification of monitoring large amount non-residential generators, notify the large amount non-residential generators if they are out of compliance, and also provide education at least twice a year to these large quantity generators. Now, once again, M is different than I, which is just providing an opportunity for food waste generators to compost. This requires the large generators to participate in this program. So it is a requirement, not an option. At the end of the form, we have provided a space for you to tell us what you're doing above and beyond the requirements. If you want to tell us all the great things that you are doing that aren't required, we'd like to hear about it, and you can provide that information here. That concludes the instructions for the recycling program elements. When you are done completing this form, however, please don't forget to have a city official sign it before you submit it back to DEQ. Thank you for listening today, and please reach out to your regional specialist if you have any questions about this form or your city's recycling programs.